The Prescription Drug Marketing Act, PDMA, was passed in 1987 in response to the development of a wholesale diversion market for prescription drugs. It's designed to discourage the sale of counterfeit, adulterated, misbranded, subpotent, and expired pharmaceuticals. The Act is implemented as Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 203, Prescription Drug Marketing Act, and Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 205, Guidelines for State Licensing of Wholesale Prescription Drug Distributors. The Prescription Drug Marketing Act of 1987, PDMA, was modified by the Prescription Drug Amendments of 1992, PDA. The FDA Compliance Policy Guide Prescription Drug Marketing Act describes how the agency intends to enforce these titles. In addition, the FDA made available Guidance for Industry, Prescription Drug Marketing Act Pedigree Requirements, Questions and Answers. The Prescription Drug Marketing Act, PDMA, is divided into 8 subparts. Subpart A, General Provisions which cover scope, purpose, and definitions. Subpart B, Reimportation on restrictions on reimportation and applications for exceptions. Subpart C, Sale restrictions, exclusions, and returns. Subpart D, Samples, which covers distribution of drug samples by mail or common carrier and by a representative or detailer. Storage and handling of samples. Administrative relating to the handling of samples, such as request forms, policies, procedures, record keeping, numbering and labeling, and also investigation and notification obligations. Subpart E, Requirements for wholesale distribution of prescription drugs. Subpart F, Requests and receipt forms, reports, and records. And Subpart G, Rewards. The Act covers prescription drugs including both bulk drug substances and finished dosage forms in drug samples. Restrictions do not apply to blood and blood components intended for transfusion. In Section A, the Act defines and explains relevant terminology. Authorized distributor of record means a distributor with whom a manufacturer has established an ongoing relationship to distribute such manufacturer's products. On the other hand, unauthorized distributor has no such relationship with the manufacturer. To distribute means to sell, offer to sell, deliver, or offer to deliver a drug to a recipient. The term is distinct from mere delivery of a drug by a common carrier in the usual course of business to a practitioner or healthcare professional acting under supervision of a practitioner or a pharmacist. Wholesale distribution means distribution of prescription drugs to persons other than the consumer or patient. Intra-organizational paid transfers, emergencies, providing of samples, and drug returns do not count. The term wholesale distributor means any person engaged in wholesale distribution of prescription drugs. Such manufacturers, repackers, own label distributors, private label distributors, jobbers, brokers, warehouses, independent wholesale drug traders, and retail pharmacies. Subpart B details restrictions on reimportation of prescription drugs. No prescription drug that has been manufactured in a state and exported from the United States may be reimported back by anyone other than its manufacturer. There is an exception for emergencies. Applications for reimportation are submitted to and reviewed by the Director of the District FDA Office. Sales restrictions are discussed in Section C. According to this provision, no person may sell, purchase, or trade or offer to sell, purchase, or trade any prescription drug that was purchased by a public or private hospital or other healthcare entity, or donated or supplied at a reduced price to a charitable organization. Dispensing of a drug under a valid prescription, intra-organizational paid transfers, returns, and distribution in emergencies are exempt. Government-operated healthcare facilities are exempt from this restriction also. Distribution of samples is discussed in detail in Section D. This section is especially relevant to pharmaceutical representatives in the U.S. Drug sample means a unit of a prescription drug that is not intended for sale and is intended to promote the sale of the drug. Samples of a drug can be delivered to a licensed practitioner either by mail or common carrier, or by a representative or detailer. In any case, the practitioner needs to submit a written request for a drug sample. This is done on forms provided by the manufacturer or distributor. Inventory and reconciliation of drug samples is the responsibility of manufacturers or authorized distributors. Thefts and significant losses have to be recorded also. Each manufacturer or authorized distributor also has to maintain a list of representatives who represent drug samples and of the sites where drug samples are stored. Distributors and representatives must handle the samples in compliance with the compendial and labeling requirements for the particular drug. In addition to that, drug samples have to be numbered and appropriately labeled. The manufacturer and authorized representative are responsible for maintenance of forms, reports, and records. These have to be made available upon request by the FDA or other federal, state, or local regulatory or law enforcement officials. To prevent diversion of prescription drugs, manufacturers and authorized distributors need to report to the FDA any instances of falsification of drug sample records, thefts, and significant losses, and promptly investigate such incidents. They also need to report conviction of representative and selection of individual responsible for drug sample information. Special attention is paid to drugs donated to charitable organizations. Drug samples have to be delivered in properly labeled and unopened packaging in a sealed carton for delivery. A licensed practitioner or pharmacist has to examine the donation prior to its dispensing to patients to confirm the drugs are not adulterated, misbranded, or expired, or otherwise unfit for use. Charities have to maintain records, conduct inventory reconciliations, and report thefts and significant losses to the FDA. Subpart E, Wholesale Distribution, describes in detail requirements applicable to wholesalers and manufacturers. Before completion of any distribution, unauthorized distributors must provide the purchaser an origin statement identifying each prior sale, purchase, or trade of such drug. Manufacturers shall maintain a list of authorized distributors and keep the list up to date. This list should be made available to the public on request. Section F, Requests and Receipt Forms, Reports and Records, details requirements on the use of electronic records, signatures, and their combination with paper records. This section also covers maintenance, security, and authentication of distributors' records and their transmission. Transmission of any records must provide reasonable assurance of their resistance to tampering, revision, modification, fraud, unauthorized use, or alteration. Records must be preserved in an accessible and retrievable fashion and retained for at least 3 years since their creation. The last section, G, details rewards for providing information leading to criminal proceeding and conviction of a person for distribution of a drug sample in violation of Section 503(c)(1), restricted sale. The FDA Modernization Act of 1997, FDAMA, amended several sections of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, FD&C Act. 2. 1. Ban the reimportation of prescription human drugs manufactured in the U.S., except when reimported by the manufacturer or for emergency medical care with permission of the Secretary. 2. Prohibit, with certain exceptions, the sale, purchase, or trade, including the offer to sell, purchase, or trade, of prescription human drugs purchased by hospitals or other healthcare entities, and of prescription human drugs donated or sold at reduced cost to charitable institutions. 3. Ban the sale, purchase, trade, or counterfeiting of drug coupons. 4. Ban the sale, purchase, or trade of prescription drug samples. 5. Require state licensing of wholesale distributors of prescription human drugs under federal guidelines that include minimum standards for storage, handling, and record keeping. 6. Require unauthorized drug distributors to provide a statement of origin, pedigree, as part of certain drug sales. And 7. Set forth criminal and civil penalties for violations of these provisions.